a little panic when I said my sermon's not up there. It was up there when I came in, and I asked everybody, and finally it was found. I don't know why anybody would think this wasn't the sermon, but I could have done it without the sermon, but it would have had no terminating factor on it. So Jim wanted to make sure he got it to me, so it would have an end, I'm sure. We're back to the shepherds again today. And if you've been any part of Good Samaritan, either virtually or in person during the Christmas season, you've met these shepherds before. In fact, you've likely met them many times in their life. We always wonder, because it says they were amazed, it says they were terrified. There they were doing their business on out in the rugged hillside, but they always did, the care and tending of the sheep and the importance of that, and all of a sudden interrupted by an angel with an announcement to share and with a heavenly chorus then singing. They had no idea, I'm sure. I'm sure it never came to their mind that it was not a coincidence that they had been the ones to hear the word. For they wouldn't have thought about it if they even knew that 356 years before, there was another young shepherd on that hillside. Another young shepherd born in the area of Bethlehem. Another young shepherd that would grow up to be King David, the king of the Israelites. I'm not even Jewish, but I got chills and goosebumps just to say those words. Those words that, once again, now, shepherds played a holy role. I think it goes to show you that if you're a shepherd on the hillside, you'd have no idea what all is going to happen. Today's gospel is pretty much like the ones you've heard Christmas Eve and Christmas morning, except for that last verse that Jim read to you, the 21st verse. For the 21st verse takes Mary and Joseph from the manger in Bethlehem to the place of the circumcision of Jesus. And of course, he was going to be circumcised. Mary and Joseph were good law-abiding Jews, and so they took him there, and he was to be circumcised, and also his name would be given. And that was not a question, of course, for before he was even created in Mary's womb, the angel had told Mary, and his name shall be Jesus. And so that's what it tells us in that 21st verse. Simply stated, and he was called Jesus. Jesus, that means Yahweh saves. Jesus, that means God saves. And in that very name, you can see Jesus' divine status and also Jesus' specific mission. God saves. God saves for Israel, and through Israel, it says there in the scriptures with us, out into the whole world. That change agent baby who had been wrapped in swaddling clothes with the unusual signs that came to people like the shepherds, a very special way must have surely confirmed. If Mary still had any nervousness in her heart, I mean, after all, a long journey giving birth in a cave or the manger in the part of the cave where he was born, imagine how with a gulp and a sigh you would accept that role yet again. What confidence it must have brought her, in spite of her faith that it was true, but what confidence it must have brought her to have the shepherd show up and say, we were on the hillside, and the angel came to us and sang to us the song about this birth, and it was so exciting to us that we had to come. We wanted to see that baby for ourselves. Yes, Luke 2 is my favorite Christmas story, and it has been since I was born. I was raised in a little town in southwest Indiana, Shelburne, Indiana, a town of about 1,000 people when all the farmers came into the elevator on Saturday morning. And I went to a little Methodist church there, and every year we got to be a part of Christmas. Every year we memorized our parts, and we got up on, and it looked like to us 1,000 people when there were probably 50 before us, and we got to proclaim that word. When I was a teenager, they said, why don't you be in charge of this, and you put this on for the children, and so I did. And you may have heard me say before that I gave a part to 4 of the kids to hold up the letters for Noel, and and then to say their piece. And so they had it all memorized, only I had them come in at the reverse order. And Noel held up became Leon. And they all said their parts about Leon and Christmas. Oh, anyway, I have other favorite Christmas stories too, but that's my favorite. Andrew, my knower of all things of religion, told me that my little church was closing last year. He even told me when it was the very last day that it was going to be open. The idea of the church closing and being now a part of this church seemed to have some sort of completion in it, I guess. But they might have closed that church, but they never closed the story in the children that grew up there. They never closed the story of the Christmases when we read those words. It never closed the story of the very simple Christmas pageant we had. Think and imagine, will you, what it's like for the children that grow up here, that year after year after year, the Christmas pageant gloriously presented, costumed and set scenery. Yes, it will never leave the hearts of those children or those of you who hear it each year. Now, I do have other favorite Christmas stories. The Grinch, I love. I love what happened down at Whoville that night with little Cindy Lou Who and the change that came over the Grinch. And I love Wonderful Life. And if I say every time a bell rings, you know what happens. What happens? An angel gets its wings. Do you have any other Christmas stories that I haven't accounted here that you like to see every year? Anybody? No? What? Prancer. Is that a show on TV? Oh, we'll have to look that up. An old one. Well, another old one I thought maybe somebody might say, and that's Charlie Brown's Christmas. How often have you heard that inflection, the line used, that must be a Charlie Brown Christmas tree, and we know exactly what that means. That's a favorite of mine because I believe that it comes straight from Luke. I really do, because of that line. Everybody sees that and gets down on Charlie because of his little meager Christmas tree, and that's how the story goes. But in the end, Linus has this line. I never thought it was such a bad tree. It's not bad at all, really. Maybe it just needed a little love. Maybe it just needed a little love. I think that that's what God thought when the time for Christmas had come. I think God thought, I never thought it was such a bad little world. It's not really bad at all. It just needs a little love. Enter Christmas. Enter Christ. Okay, one more of my favorite Christmas stories. And it's a story that only two people here have ever heard. One is Calvin, who will say, I've heard it 14 times. And the other is Joanne Bailey, who's only heard it once. She heard it as she and I sat on the radiator in Cal's hospital room, one of the 24 days he just frequented there. And while Joe and Cal were doing Joe and Cal talk, Joanne and I were sitting there, and somehow the conversation wandered into a Christmas story important to me. I want to share that story with you now. It didn't start out like a Christmas story at all. In fact, it started out as one of the many stories that grow out of new church starts. Not the one here, but one in Carmel, Indiana, 1978 to 1990, while I was a part of that. It started out when we got the idea that we should take the youth every year for a week to Appalachia, to the Redbird Missionary Conference, and we should find there something for us to do. Not the already designed things where you stay in a dormitory and somebody fixes your meal and you go and the tools are all there and you're ready to go. Not that kind at all. I wanted us to immerse ourselves in the lives of people that did not really even know we were coming and probably would be think it was a little chancy to get too well acquainted with us anyway. And we did that for the summers of 13 years. And what grew out of that, incidentally, St. Mark's, if you know Carmel, is just east of Keystone, 126 and Gray Road. If you know that area and you go by, by, honk twice as you go by. Well, the very first week we went, the pastor, the youth group, and most of the parents of the youth all went down to the Jacks Creek little town, little community. And the first year, we didn't know what we were going to do when we got there, but the first year we looked at the creek behind Jacks Creek Methodist Church that was supposed to be flowing along. It was kind of dribbling along because over the years, people would throw trash in it, not just trash, but junk. There was a refrigerator, there were 2 old cars, there were car parts, and who knows what all that was there and had sunk into the muck of the area. We thought that's a good start, so everybody put on their swimsuits, and we walked down into the Jacks Creek, and we started hauling out things. Somebody found a truck we could borrow, we got them into the truck and hauled them away, and that went on for about a day and a half. It was a strange thing for them to see these northerners coming down doing, I'm sure. And so a few of them started kind of talking with us a little, rolling their eyes at times, but then joining in. And so when they stayed afterward, I'm sure they wondered, how are they going to clean up? But I had that all figured out. We were going to sleep in sleeping bags on the pews in the sanctuary up the little stairs, and then we were going to take a bath, kind of a makeshift shower that I invented, I'll have you know. I opened up the window in the sanctuary. I told the kids in their swimsuits to line up one person at a time standing under the window. And I poured pitchers of cold water down upon them for them to wash out. Now, if the locals already wondered about us, believe me, they went around telling everybody they knew. Day 2, bunches of more people showed up. End of day 2, those people said, you know what? Why don't you just, some of you come home with each one of us and take a bath tonight like real people do. And that's what we did. That's what we did. It was a wonderful time, and it did not take long before they were talking with us about what we might do together next year, and the next, and the next. The summers went on. You see, it never was such a bad little world. Not bad at all, really. What it needs is a little love. Now, I occasionally talked to the pastor of Jacks Creek Methodist Church during the year. He was also the district superintendent of the Redbird Missionary Conference, and we had different kinds of things to talk about, so I wasn't really surprised when I was in the office one early December day when he called. It was back before cell phones. It was back before names popped up on the phone, you know. And so I answered the phone, and it was him, and I was glad to talk with him again. He finally, very quickly, actually got down to the reason of his call. He said, you know, the parents of the kids that you come down and work with here at Jacks Creek, they came to me and they have an idea. Actually, they have a request. They would like their young people to come up to Carmel and to live in the homes of your families for a few days. And then he said, and they've picked the date, December 26th of this year, the day after Christmas. Now he said, I know you can't speak for them, but maybe you could run the idea by them. He said, and Yvonne, remember that these parents have never seen their kids going outside of their county in Appalachia. And they want me to get the district van and drive them all up to another state to live with their friends a few days. I said, I will get them together after church Sunday. I'll get back with you. I'll get back with you. So, with a gulp and a sigh, I did just that after church on Sunday. I had notified them to please meet me in the church office for a short time after church. You see, I knew Carmel families, and I knew that these Carmel families were staying in town every Christmas, and other relatives from other parts of the country would fly in and have Christmas with them. They really swelled our Christmas services, of course. I knew they were going to be there. I had no idea what the reaction would be, but when they were there, they walked in, and one of the guys said, what have you got up your sleeve this time, Yvonne? I said, well, actually, it's not up my sleeve. Actually, it's not up my sleeve, it's up Jim Davis's sleeve. He called this week. They knew Jim well. I said, the idea came from the parents of the youth that work with us when we come to Jack's Creek every year, and the parents would like for their children to come up and stay in your homes for a couple of days, and they gave me the date, the day after Christmas this year. All the energy left that room for what seemed like an eternity. And then one woman, brave enough she was to put words into the feeling and mood of everybody in that room, one woman said, I don't want them to come. I don't want them to come. I don't want them to see what all we have. I don't want them to come. More silence. More silence. Another person said, we have plans those 3 days after Christmas for our kids and our family. And another one said, my house is decorated from top to bottom and everything on the block around us. I don't really want him to come. Another one said the real reason, which was, when we're down there working with them, it's like we're all one. We're just together. I don't know what it will be like here. And more silence. Finally, someone said, Yvonne, on a lot easier reason times, you have said to us over and over again, when the church is asked to do something, there's only two answers you've got. You can say yes, or you can say no. And I said, yes, I've said that, but there's likely sometimes extenuating circumstances. I wanted them to understand. I knew where their hearts and spirits were. And one woman who had not yet spoken said, there are no extenuating circumstances. Our answer has to be yes. And with that, the change was palpable in that room. And someone said, I do have plans for the 3 days after Christmas right here locally, but we'll just take the kids with us. And another said, we've got a house full coming, but there's always room on the floor for blankets and bedrolls, I'm sure. As a matter of fact, our teenagers are going to sleep on the floor with them, I'm sure. And that's how the story of that meeting ended. Or maybe that's how the story of Christmas begins. You see, it's not such a bad little world, not bad at all, really. What it needs always is just a little love. Well, the Jack's Creek kids came, and the families met them in the parking lot, and they moved them into their vans, and they moved them into their houses, and each of them had some kind of a gift under the tree. They'd all wrapped the other ones the morning before, but they had them there, had something for however many were staying, and to say that a good time was had by all is an understatement of the world. They all got together again in the parking lot after 3 days with all of those families. The laughter, the joy, the sharing, the hugs were genuine and prolific. Any kind of worry, any kind of hesitancy, any kind of misunderstanding, of stuck in pride, of worry for what all you have and what somebody else might not, it had all long disappeared. And so off they went, with us all waving goodbye, knowing we'd see them again next summer. I went back into the office, people drove home. I had a little bit of work to do, a pastor always does on the coming sermon. So I was sitting there and the phone rang. And I was very surprised it was Jim Davis, the pastor of Jack's Creek Methodist, the district superintendent of the Redbird Missionary Conference, who had come back with a district van and has carting the people home at that time. He said, Yvonne, I had to talk to you. I had to talk to you. I had to stop. We stopped down here on 65 at a rest area because I want you to know what the kids are talking about. They're talking so fast and all at once, and as the driver of the van, it's been really hard to make it out, but I can tell you what it is that they're saying. One of them said, you know what that church needs? You know, I looked all around, and what St. Mark's doesn't have, they've got that beautiful flower garden that everything must be beautiful in the summertime, and they've got a big wooden cross right there in the middle of it. But you know what they don't have? They haven't got any benches. They haven't got any benches to sit around and enjoy that and sit around and look at that cross. They need benches. And one of the others, he said, my dad fells trees. That's what he does for a living. And another one said, my dad works at the sawmill. He can make them into boards. And someone said, Jim, how many benches do you suppose we could get in a district van if we put them together and took them back to St. Mark's? We could go in the spring on spring break. And Jim said, we're coming back. Benches and all. Christmas is the great leveler. Christ is the great leveler. The great leveler of perceived lack. The great leveler of perceived differences. The great leveler of perceived division. You got something you need leveled out right now? There's Christ. You see, there is always enough darkness to go around. There's always enough darkness to go around in your heart or in the heart of those about whom you care. There's always enough darkness to go around. There's always enough darkness to go around in this globe. Injustice, inequity, world and personal health crisis all over the world, the ones that we don't wear our masks for, and others maybe don't even have masks for at all. There's always enough darkness when the power of acknowledged personhood is undeserving anywhere to any human being. But there is light to brighten up the world. Sure, we find ourselves sometimes not sure the light's around us right now. And that's the way it is. And so I'll be the light for you when you can't see it, and you'll be the light for me when I can't see it. That's how this works. We take turns. Light always trumps the darkness every time. Okay, so here's the scoop. Christmas changes things. The Christmas star never dims. We look back in reverent reflection upon that first Christmas, and because of it, we look ahead in reverent assurance and excitement. Because it's not such a bad little life we lead on this planet. It's not bad at all, really. It just needs a little love. And that is the gospel according to Luke, to Linus, to Good Samaritan, and to you and me. Amen.